You are live. Hello, world. We're live. I know because my screen told me so. So it is Thursday. It is 12 o'clock. Okay, it's 12:01. I hit the button a minute late. But here we are for this week's live lunch. Oh, it looks like it's not live streaming to LinkedIn. I've just had a little warning here. Let me see if I can fix that in the background whilst we're cracking on. So lovely to see everyone this week. Obviously, last week I failed to appear because I got caught up with a client, and it was really exciting though. It's a client that's planning all sorts of fantastic things this year from a marketing perspective. And you know, when you go into a conversation expecting to talk about one thing, and then all of a sudden you're talking about like 20 different things, and you're like, oh, I get to be creative. So I kind of left you to it, but I thought it was a really good episode. I thought the conversation was really good, and you were talking about loads of stuff. So I did have that little pang of feeling like, oh, maybe they don't need me.
Yeah, we didn't miss you, did we? Of course we did.
So yeah, you need me. Okay, so this week then.
It's not the same, although it's like one in, one out, because obviously we're missing Emily today. So.
Yeah, she's poorly. She's poorly / making excuses because she feels like she did her bit last week. I don't know. But yeah, it's been a strange week. It's like we've all we've not kind of talked to each other as much this week because we've had so much going on. All our heads have really sort of been down, working in projects and that kind of thing. So yeah, what have we been getting up to, and what's been the news this week? What have we been seeing? Mark, I imagine you are, because you're just like website at the minute. I can't imagine you've looked at anything else, but I think the number of websites you've been working on, the communications I've seen, have you got any tips for when people are putting their website briefs together? And I'm asking this thinking about like when you're thinking you're going to be able to plug stuff into your website, like integrations, that kind of thing. I know we've had a few things pop up that were a bit unexpected because they weren't included in the brief. So without answering the question whilst I ask it, realise what I've done there now. But yeah, like any tips for people in terms of sort of giving briefs and things, bearing in mind what you've been working on recently?
Yeah, I suppose it is just trying to cover every base really and think about exactly what that functionality looks like. So if extra bits need sort of plugging into the website, it's thinking about that from the very start rather than sort of then it becomes a bit of an afterthought, sort of halfway through the process really. So it's, I suppose from a client point of view, it's just thinking what is actually going on certain pages, what needs to be added in there to get the functionality they're looking for. And then obviously we're trying to ask the question at the start as well. But sometimes, those bits do get sort of lost in translation maybe. So it is, just thinking about the process, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's not a very good answer.
It's tricky though, isn't it? Because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone, my first call this morning, I was talking to someone about how things are going in their business and what they're doing moving forward, and they're looking at launching something, and it's kind of, and they're like, so how can I do some marketing around this? And I'm like, well, have you thought about this, and have you thought about that, and you've thought about the other? And it's kind of some of the things I was coming up with they didn't think about as marketing.
Yeah,
it's like, well, that's just an email, that's just communication, rather than thinking about it as a marketing activity. And so it is that you don't know what you don't know. I had another conversation with someone about, maybe I wasn't going to tell you about this. I've had another conversation with another new client about branding and ebooks and logos and things like that. And please come back to work tomorrow, Mark.
I'm not in tomorrow.
Yeah, Monday. But so we talk about branding and refreshing their brand and all of that kind of thing. And right at the end of the conversation, they threw in the fact that they've got a load of sub brands. And it's kind of like, didn't think to lead with that, no?
Yeah.
But it is, you don't know what you don't know. For most people, they're kind of, you think about your website, you brief it in, and either, if you're doing it right and you're working with the right agency, hint, hint, then actually that website's going to last you a lot of years, because it's something that's constantly alive and evolving and all that sort of stuff. Most people, I would say, potentially are working with someone and they create one website that's static, and 5 years, 10 years down the line, they're going, oh, our website's a bit dated, we need a new website. Yeah. So actually they don't go through that process, they don't go through the process very often.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. And I think that's the thing is, like you say, websites do evolve, almost organically, because, businesses change, and what, business need to do, develops over time. But I suppose, yeah, the thing to think about is, like you say, it's almost a bit like the marketing thing, where you say, oh, they didn't think about that as being marketing. Then there's like things that people are perhaps doing marketing wise that should be linking to the website, but they're not thinking about that as being a website thing. Everything is done in isolation.
Yeah.
So, whether it be, obviously we talked to a lot of people about integrating things like MailChimp and things in, but then there's like extra bits sometimes that perhaps they don't think about, and they're doing that as an almost separate entity, when in fact it should be, an integrated thing really, and thought about as one whole.
Yeah. There's Amanda, you probably find this as well, because I know that the conversations that you and I have with our clients is quite often we're talking about lots of different elements of their marketing activity, rather than just sort of, one silo, if you like.
Mm.
And I think if we come across a lot of clients that perhaps have been doing stuff already, but no one's got, and I just use this analogy with someone else, it's like they've got all the balloons are there, but there's no one holding the strings together. It's like all this information, it's like nothing's being fed down into one place. And nothing's working together, and like it's are your blogs feeding your email marketing and your social media, or is it like we're doing blogs here, we're doing social media there, and then we're writing something else for our email marketing over there, and now we're going to do an ebook, and that's more writing again. And I'm like, those blogs you've been doing, that can tick all of those boxes if we're really clever and efficient with it.
I think you often find that in sort of medium-sized companies and upwards, where there are different departments doing different things. So especially ones that are, how can I say, less forward-thinking. So, historically, if you get companies where there is a sales team, so, whether it's the sales consultants, business development managers, whatever you want to call them, they will sort of do their own emails. They'll do their own social media presence, and market, or sometimes they might do something and then just give it to marketing and our least favorite phrase, can you jazz this up? But as
can you make it look pretty?
Make it look pretty, or even worse, can you make it sexy? It's just horrible phrase. You're right, because it's just not being efficient. So if that's all coming from one place and that content is being created or even curated, so it's not the case that marketing has to hold those balloons and not let anyone else play with them. It's kind of, you can have a balloon, you can have a balloon, but I want to know what they all are.
I'm giggling. I can't not giggle at that.
Am I taking your analogy a bit too far?
I'm like, no, I'm just like,
oh
yeah, it's like, it's just the whole playing, like you're playing with your balloons, Amanda. I'm just like, it just got me where I lived. I'm sorry. I couldn't keep that one to myself.
Honestly. We're barely 10 minutes in and the tone has gone like that.
Like I said, I think it was slightly better when I wasn't involved in it.
It's not quite,
safer, maybe.
PG last week.
I'm like, that's why we've had all those inquiries this week. Fantastic. So Jane, other than telling us, I have to say, I'm like, we all jumped on this and we were like, why is Jane so smart today? I'm like, I really feel like I've let the side down.
It's pure laziness. Throw a jacket on top of whatever you're wearing and it looks smart straight away.
Excellent. But what have you seen this week? What have you been coming across news-wise that's or frustration-wise that you want to share with us?
There hasn't actually really been a lot of news this week. It's frustrating when there isn't any news, because obviously I'm involved in our coaching club email that we send out news and things like that. And when there isn't any, I'm literally scrabbling around. There's somebody do something with one of your platforms, please, because I've got nothing to talk about in my email on Monday. So yeah, there isn't really a lot going on. The Facebook newsfeed has rolled out to some people. That's new, and apparently I seem to have it on my phone. Although I can't say it looks any different really to what it was before. But apparently, sorry, Karen.
I was going to say, yeah. Maybe that's what you're just going to do. Do you want to sort of explain what the newsfeed is? The new newsfeed is.
To be honest, like I said, I'm not 100% sure whether what I have is actually the new newsfeed. In my menu at the bottom of my phone, I now have news, which does appear to be curated a little bit more towards things I normally look at. So I'm thinking that that's the new news feed. But to be honest, a lot of the articles I've seen and the screenshots about it aren't actually that forthcoming as to what you should expect. I mean, I've seen something today to say they were going to do some testing to make it a bit less political. So that's interesting, but obviously that's not happened yet. But yeah, sort of looking at mine now, it says good afternoon, Jane. It's giving me the weather and things like that, and it's giving me some articles that are related to things that I have looked at recently. So that's what I'm assuming it is. But it's down on the menu on the bottom left-hand side on an iPhone. Couldn't tell you where it is on Android, I'm afraid. And yeah, it's just a feed of news articles from the Telegraph, Channel 4, sort of big news players. Yeah. But I don't know if anyone else has looked at it at all. But
I haven't got it yet. It's funny, on LinkedIn, I'd say 80% of the changes on LinkedIn I seem to get quite quickly. On Facebook, however, it always feels like I'm one of the last people to get them. So, like the new Facebook pages, it was like everyone I was working with had the new layout, and my login was still stuck on the old layout. So, it's funny how this stuff rolls out. Thinking about just sort of, around Facebook and news and that kind of thing, there has been, like I say, most of the news this week has been about who's making money or who isn't, what's happening politically. So like TikTok bans, whether they're being given or lifted or whatever. Sort of big news from a TikTok perspective is that US have now, they've said they're not pushing through this need for TikTok to sell over there to Walmart, etc., which we kind of guessed might happen at some point anyway because of the way the dates went and presidential elections and all that sort of stuff. Twitter have announced fantastic profits for the last quarter, which is kind of weird when you think like Twitter's not been doing anything for ages. They've never really sorted out their advertising function has never really kind of gripped people. It's never really worked in the way that like Facebook ads work or that LinkedIn ads are starting to work. But one of the things that they've done over the last couple of weeks is buy something called Review. Now, Review, if you imagine, is like it's a French company, but it's almost like a bit of a MailChimp. So people put together newsletters. So Recruiting Brain Food is like a weekly email newsletter that comes out on a Sunday. That's delivered via Review. Lonely Marketers, so Glenn Southam, who's joined us on here previously, he delivers his weekly newsletter for Recruitment Marketers via Review. Well, Twitter bought that business in the last couple of weeks. So there's been some talks about how Twitter's going to monetize going forward, bringing in subscription models, that kind of stuff. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. It's not going to happen anytime soon because nothing on Twitter happens very soon. But it'll be interesting to see how they look to monetize. And the fact that they've made these moves at a time where they've been doing really well, I think just makes me wonder if they've got, plans that haven't come to the forefront yet. So it might be one to watch.
Twitter ad spend went up in Q4 last year. So I know when I was putting together various stats, and I wondered if that's partially down to things like some of the major particularly in the US, the major political events, because people are able to follow it so quickly and so in the moment. So people are, maybe Twitter is coming into its own a little bit at the moment, because you can get literally kind of on the scene, in the moment news. And as a result, people are thinking, okay, we'll pop some ad spend here. I mean, you've only got to see about some of the, that council meeting that went viral. How quickly did that go viral?
Yeah.
And that's probably down to Twitter. So,
if it all goes wrong today, that could be us.
Yeah, you have no authority here, Christina Robinson.
Read the standing orders.
Okay, let's talk about trending posts then, trending stuff. So Jane was the first of us to see it on, what day was it? Tuesday?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
See, it's like, I've not even said what it is. You know what I'm talking about. And, as everyone knows, we don't plan this. So the whole beans on Weetabix. So people that are watching this, if they've seen us presenting for years, we've got this analogy around beans on toast with cheese on top, and we use that to explain how the algorithms work and how you should not just be posting about your salesy stuff. And we get, over the years, we've been tagged into so many things where it's like, a jacket potato with baked beans and cheese, or, toast and beans and cheese and stuff like that. So when Weetabix posted this image with baked beans on a couple of Weetabix, it was just like, I've had so many messages going, have you seen this? But they're not going to put cheese on that.
As long as they put it on the top.
But I mean, it was just fantastic, wasn't it? Just the way that it rolled out, and other brands got on board with it, and not your usual brands either. There are some brands that are really, I think, are known in our world now for having really good, witty responses. But it was like when NHS were responding, and national rail inquiries and stuff like that. It was just fantastic. Jane, I know it gave you lots of entertainment.
It definitely did. Even the police, various police forces were joining in and saying, this is not a crime, don't report it, and stuff like that. And fire departments, all sorts of, it was hilarious. I was working at the time, honestly. I wasn't just reading Twitter all day.
That is part of Jane's job, to be fair. It is officially part of her job. But the great thing about it is that if you have something that works, doesn't matter what platform it starts on, it ends up everywhere. And so obviously, we'd because of what we're doing, we became aware of it very early, not long after it had been posted, and we were like watching it roll out kind of real time. And I'd posted it on LinkedIn like that afternoon. Then Wednesday morning, when kind of overnight, I think it had been something like it had been picked up in the news as well. And it's like the next morning I opened up LinkedIn and it was just post after post after post with like screenshots of this bowl of Weetabix and baked beans. And there's a group that Jane and I are in, and it was like one of the social media people for Specsavers. And she I think was it a tweet or a Facebook post, and she was like, what it's like to be a social media manager in 2021. And she'd literally got a plate with a pairs of glasses and baked beans poured across them. And it was like, trying to explain to your boyfriend why you're doing this. And the reality is that's kind of our life. When you're working with social media, when stuff like that happens, you're thinking like, what can I do with baked beans now? But the flip side, in all seriousness, so I'm going to take it to a slightly dark note now. So if we think back to like Black Lives Matter, if we think about, the stuff in the US over the last few weeks, like all Brexit, as much as there's the fun stuff that everyone gets behind and we're like, this is brilliant and it's, it's really entertaining, there's like the dark stuff as well. There's a lot of people that are like, social media is really depressing. I'm going to have a break from social media. We don't get to do that. It's our job. Doesn't matter how much you want to break from it. We've still got to look at it every day, and all the scrolling and everything else. It's like, it's really hard to keep away from it. So I think there is a question around mindset. And I know we've done blogs before about, here are some accounts you can follow on social media that are kind of, will give you a bit of balance in the world, and they're going to give you a bit of light in comparison with the darker stuff that we see. But just thinking about mindset, how do you manage that when you are in it all the time, day to day? Like for me, I am a total social media hopper. So I probably don't spend more than 10 minutes on any social media platform in any one go, because the repetition of the content on the platform sometimes, partly because of the channels that I follow as a user, it's like I have a quick scroll through and then I have to go to something else. If I literally spent hours in one hit, then yeah, I would get drawn into quite a dark place. So Jane, what do you do? Is there anything you do to kind of balance it out? Any strict rules you have for yourself or anything like that?
No, I am a bit of a get lost in the whole of Facebook in the evening. I'm watching telly or trying to while scrolling my phone, which is really bad. And yeah, I might sit there for an hour, literally scrolling everything. However, if I see something that's interesting for work, I will save it there, ready for the next day to actually use work-wise. So, but no, I don't really have any rules for myself. I don't always click right into a lot of articles though, because like you said, sometimes the doom scrolling can get on top of you. So if I see an article and it looks like it's going to be a bit sort of depressing or whatever, I'd probably just scroll by it. But other than that, I don't really have any rules for myself.
What about you, Amanda?
Yeah, so really good point. I do a no phone in the bedroom because it's just too tempting to. Are you laughing again?
No.
Well, it's too tempting because when as Jane says, we're
No,
doom scrolling. You don't want to be thinking about horrible things before bed. You want to be thinking about nice things. So even if you're following happy accounts, maybe you should ask Mark.
Oh my God, I'm loving this episode.
So no, but also it does have because too easy, social media or otherwise, the first thing people tend to do in the morning, reach for their phone, look for the little red dots where all the notifications are. So whether it's your email, WhatsApps, social media notifications, you don't want to be waking up to, oh, and we've reached this milestone of X number of people have passed away, or this awful thing has happened in the States, or you've got an email from a client going, I need you to put this post out, because you're already stressed before the day started. So, phone in another room. So at least you can get up and have a shower or have a cup of tea or whatever before you go and look. And then you can get depressed. I loved the Weetabix thing earlier this week. So as you guys know, I was on site with a client, so I missed the interaction we had, but the radio was on. So as you say, it went viral so quickly. They were talking about it on the radio, and I was desperate to go and have a look. But I think people might think, well, what's the point? What's the point of these other brands getting involved? But it showcases how creative and fun. And some of the responses were hilarious, because you had, I think it was Sainsbury's pulled in on that parish council meeting by saying, you have no authority here, Heinz. And even Skyscanner, the ones that do flights, they're kind of saying, oh, this is almost as bad as people who clap when a plane lands. So, these people are the worst. But it was fantastic to see, and that those little glimmers of hope and little light-hearted relief. There's another phrase for it on Twitter where it's kind of like a newsfeed break or a
news jacket.
No, when you're scrolling through, it's like this. Someone will just suddenly posted, like, I don't know, a picture of a panda on a snowball. That was kind of trending because there was pandas at a zoo in Washington, and it was kind of like a newsfeed cleanser or something. So to stop your doom scrolling, here's a newsfeed cleanser. So it's just something really lighthearted that stops the bad. So that's kind of becoming a bit of a thing as well. Yeah. Which I thought was quite interesting. So yeah, you're right. It is all about balance, because it is too hard to get sucked into it, both time-wise and mental health-wise.
Yeah. I want to pick up on the time thing, but before we do, Mark, I think you're probably the best out of all of us in terms of sort of having stricter rules when it comes to like having the phone out of reach and that kind of cut off, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, as we've spoken about, I don't have my emails and things on the phone. Obviously, I still get sort of junior notifications from pages and things. But yeah, I probably don't look at that as much. And then sort of personally, the snooze button on Facebook is your friend. But when you see things that you don't want to see, just snooze the person or the brand 30 days, and then you can review it afterwards. You've not had to unfollow.
Do you know, I'm using the mute button so much on WhatsApp at the minute, so much. And it is just like, it's notification central. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest problem isn't actually the news that we see. It's the fact that we're being drawn into those apps. It's, most people, I think, I don't know, Android's slightly different, I think. I haven't used an Android phone for so long. Someone might correct me in the comments. But, when you look at your iPhone, my front screen on my iPhone, I have loads of apps on my phone. Okay, I'm one of those people. God knows how many apps are on there. But on my front screen, I've got everything arranged. So I've got the bare minimum on that front screen. Because as soon as you see those red dots, it just pulls you in. And it's like, would I say I'm a slave to my notifications? No, I wouldn't. But actually, it's kind of, they get your attention. And those kind of like the push notifications that appear that make your phone light up, you can't not notice them. Mm. So it is on a lot of my apps, they've either moved to the second screen so that then they're not front and center, or I've turned those push notifications off. And I've kind of got them grouped as well. So I get one set of notifications for like 4 or 5 different apps rather than a screen full of them as well. Because I think it is managing things in that way can really help. So, Amanda, I wanted to pick up on the time thing. Mm. So, obviously, there's a new social media app in town. My friend Clubhouse. Do you know what's really funny? People seem to think I'm on there 24/7. I've had some. No, I'm really not. I've had some comments over the last few days. In fact, I would say I spent more time on Clubhouse yesterday than I've spent in the last 2 weeks. Interestingly, but I've had quite a bit of feedback about, "Oh, you're always on Clubhouse. You're always on Clubhouse," and it's like, actually, I'm doing one room every Wednesday at 1 o'clock for Recruitment Marketers, which is going well. So that's fab. But I'm doing that. There's a second room I'm kind of involved in, but I don't have to show up every week, and that's at 3 o'clock on a Thursday. But that's kind of it. Other than that, I'm dipping in and like 5 minutes at a time, or putting it on like the radio when I'm washing up at home, that kind of thing. I'm spending quite a small amount of time on there.
I think it's a little bit misleading, Clubhouse, their notifications, I found. Because when I first signed up for it, I must admit I'm not a prevalent user. Even once a week, I've dipped into like 2 rooms, I think, so far. But when I signed up, obviously you get the notifications, and I still had those on. So I would get a notification because I'm following you to say Christina's live, and then when you schedule your event, I get another notification. So even if I just glance at it and don't read it, I'm just seeing your name. So I imagine that's what a lot of people are seeing. It just kind of says Christina Robinson, and you're only scheduling a meeting or, a chat in there. So yeah, I think it is a little bit misleading. I'd have turned the notifications off because I was getting everything basically. And as we say, you lose time. But yeah, I haven't embraced it as much as you have, I don't think.
It's really interesting. I'm not hearing stories. I know of people that have gone and got their old iPhones out. So they've got like their phone that they're using, and then they've got a second phone that they're using for Clubhouse. And they're literally just kind of like leaving it open in a room. So it does look like they're on there 24/7.
Wow.
Which is absolutely madness. From my perspective, it's absolute madness, but there you go. So some people are spending a huge amount of time on there.
I think I get it at all, and we've had a little, sort of chat between us prior to chatting here about, well, can you listen to it just in the background, kind of like having the radio on? And I must admit, I struggle to do that, because if I really want to get involved in the conversation or digest what's going on, I will stop what I'm doing. So, maybe it's a multitasking thing, who knows? But so yeah, I'm not very good at having it just on in the background. If I have something on, it's basically kind of news fodder or music. So yeah, when I'm in there, I'm kind of in there and focused. So I would end up losing loads of time to it.
Yeah, Mark, you raised a question, didn't you, about why would you listen to that rather than listen to a podcast? And I think it really is that, when you're listening to a podcast and you're listening to a conversation on the radio, you want to give your two penneth. You can't. Whereas actually with Clubhouse, you can raise your hand, and if the moderators then bring you up on stage, you can put your two penneth in. So I think it is and there's quite a low barrier to entry. Once you're on the app, you can start your own conversations left, right, and centre. It's not like thinking about putting a podcast together and actually, who's it going to be for and what's it going to be out and what guests, what's it going to be on and what guests am I going to have and what about my intro music and what am I going to call it? It's like actually just start a room and invite some people in and just go, oh, let's talk about this.
Yeah. I still need to be convinced.
So it's a raw podcast, basically. It's a less produced podcast. So you can do it every week, but without necessarily having to think, I need to edit this. I need to, exactly as you said. So I do totally get the benefits. It's just kind of fitting it in and giving it the due time and attention.
I think right now there are a lot of rooms on there that are very general around digital marketing, because of course, as a new social media platform that is quite different to everything else we've got, all the social media people are on there. Okay, of course we're the first ones to jump on it. So that there's a lot of conversations that are people operating at different levels, but having the same kind of conversations. And I think that you have to question the value in that sometimes, maybe, depending on who's talking. There are a lot of rooms being held in there that are come up on the stage and give us your elevator pitch, and then we're going to move on to the next person, and it goes on for 3 hours, and you're just kind of like, again, there's no commonality. So therefore, I might be listening to someone in Scotland pitch their local business. Well, actually, I'm not going to be driving up to Edinburgh to go to a gym. So it's kind of there's. I think people need to think about the rooms that they're creating and think about the value. There's a lot of massive rooms that are just talking about entrepreneurship, and the kind of the big names are in there from the entrepreneurial world that are. The John Lees and Grant Cardones and the, like I say, the kind of like millionaire, billionaire people that are, writing books, selling courses, that kind of stuff. And it is I think there is value in those groups, but they're just too big for you to actually be able to get the value out of them. So I think anyone looking at Clubhouse and wanting to get, wanting to join something, you need to look at the smaller rooms. Less people in a room, you've got more chance of having a voice in there. Conversations people are going to get into in those smaller rooms means that there'll be more detail around those, and that's where the value comes in. And I think if you're looking at creating a room, you need to be as specific as you can. And if you only have 4 or 5 people in that room with you, actually, if I was going to go to an event, do a bit of networking and start a conversation, there's 4 or 5 people in that conversation, I'm probably going to create better relationships with those 4 and 5 people than I am by being in a conversation with 50 or 100 people. So if you think about that whole kind of, getting to know someone, figuring out if you actually like them or not, I think it is one of those platforms where you really, really need to not get caught up in the numbers. Like, Mark, if let's say 3 players from the Saints started a Clubhouse room, and it was an open conversation, and you could just join the conversation and be chatting to them, and let's say it's like just after a game and they're doing a bit of a debrief on the game, then I would imagine that would be something you'd want to listen into.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. I suppose maybe it's just my thing about the interaction thing. It's not something that ever sort of makes me want to do that. So I'd rather listen to something, I suppose, or watch something.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that, there's been other, I've never really used it, but things like Google Hangouts and things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not quite sure why that's never taken off, and this seems to be the new thing, if that makes sense.
Do you know what I think part of it is? I think it's timing. This business, it's not so. Clubhouse is not even 12 months old yet. It's like March that it came together. So yeah, it launched in March, just as everyone globally is stepping into this place where if you want to see other people, you've got to get on Zoom. If you refuse to do video calls before, tough luck. So actually, everyone's getting on and doing that as the app was going through those sort of initial testing phases and proof of concept with the initial people they invited on. When they started to open it up, which was like October, November, December, at that point, everyone's sick of Zoom calls. Right? It's not that we don't want to be on video because we don't want to be on camera. It's like, if I have to look at another person in a bloody box, right? And all of a sudden, we've now got this option that's audio only. You can go for a walk and get your bit of exercise and fresh air and listen into something and have a conversation with a group of people. And so I just think forget the FOMO element of it. The timing of it could not have been any better for this app.
Yeah, perfect. I actually think from a sports point of view, it's perfect. I mean, Clubhouse is the perfect name as well. So I haven't looked, but I don't know why more sports teams haven't picked up on it, especially because they can't interact with fans at the moment, really, because there's everything's being played behind closed doors. So it's a great. Okay, maybe they're a bit nervous about trolls and people coming in there, but they only invite people onto the stage who've kind of raised their hand and got a valid point. You can boot people out or mute them, can't you, if it's your room?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So hey, there you go, Mark. You could maybe start one. You could be the official Saints Clubhouse.
No, it's not for me.
Cool.
Don't force an introvert to go fully online.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So what else have we been up to this week? Anything exciting?
Trying not to freeze.
Yeah.
It's been really cold. Really cold.
Doing a bit of event marketing. So clients that we've got who are consumer facing that are gearing up for Valentine's Day. So obviously hospitality. I'm sure we're all romantics here. We won't be just sitting there scrolling through our phones at other ends of the sofa on Sunday. We'll be gazing into each other's eyes, etc. But
not in my house. I'm like Valentine's Day. It takes too much attention away from my birthday. I'm not like, if they want to move it to another month in the year, then maybe. But I'm like,
is that coming up soon, Christina?
Yeah, it's this weekend. But I'm like, it's all about
Valentine's Day.
She's gonna be 21 again.
Again.
Yeah. But yeah, so Valentine's Day. Obviously, I think any companies doing things like dine-in for twos, date night boxes, letterbox things, they are really marketing and coming into their own. Anything that can be done that way. It's Chinese New Year as well. So depending on, they're ahead of us in time, so it might actually have kicked in already. But yeah, so this year is the year of the ox. So we've got a couple of global companies that are working on that, and obviously it's a really significant date for them. So one thing I was learning, there are multiple ways, depending on whether you are speaking Mandarin or Cantonese, to say gong hei fat choi and wish somebody a happy new year. So
Well done.
there you go.
Cool.
So yes, that's been keeping me entertained this week.
Excellent. We've just had a comment from Paul. I don't get it. 21 plus VAT. Oh,
That's your
get it.
age.
That's your age.
I was looking at that going, I don't understand. Got it now. Do you know, Chinese New Year it's a funny one, isn't it? Because it's kind of, I love it when people celebrate Chinese New Year, but I equally hate it when people go, hey, happy Chinese New Year. Full stop, that's it, move on. It's kind of like, if you're going to support stuff like this, if you're going to do it, then it's like, you know, go do it or don't do it.
It's like anything we said, whether it's political statements, whether it's isms of some kind, ageism, sexism, that kind of thing. If it's appropriate to you, and the clients that I've been working with, they have bases, you know, in the Far East. They're a global company. We've been talking about cultural differences because it's also LGBTQ. It's a month that celebrates the history of that movement. It's also Black History Month. Yeah. So and some of those, for their offices that are in the Middle East, where it's actually a crime, and your homosexuality is a crime there, you know, whether or not we believe in that or not, it's less relevant to them. So we are specifically scheduling posts to go at time zones that match where they are, and the content, so you can actually schedule posts that target specific audiences. So, you know, so for the US, we're doing more on Black History Month and less on Chinese New Year. Middle East, less on LGBTQ stuff, etc., etc., etc. So you're absolutely right. It's great that people celebrate these things and recognize them, but they have to be relevant and not just here's one post, off I go.
Yeah, I think people just, it's much easier when you're not international to just kind of go, right, I'm gonna pick these dates in my year and this is what I'm going to support, and happy days, let's crack on. But I think it is when you're starting to, as a brand that's international, you've really got to have an understanding of, actually, it's that, well, what's the phrase? It's like having feet on the ground, right? You've got to understand what's happening locally in order to not really screw things up. And I think it's quite interesting. People think of social media, it's just a few posts, right? I'll just put something on Facebook, happy days. And I'm like, I kind of sometimes I wish it was that simple. That client in particular, because I know exactly who you're talking about. Oh my God, how much easier would our lives be if we could just put a post on their Facebook page once a day, happy days, and not have to think beyond, let's just keep the consistency there. But there's so much more to it than just chucking a post out.
Oh, totally. If you think bigger, and I often use, the West, if anyone ever watched The West Wing, so political drama, and they had communications directors, deputy, speech writers, and they would pore over every single word. So, even one word misplaced can change the whole meaning of something. And you almost have to think that way in what you're posting out there. So and how you respond to, so not just the post, but then how you respond to comments underneath, or how you choose to. So yeah, you've got to be in the know, you've got to reflect the sentiment that's going on in the world and think about every word you put out there. It's really not just, as you say, chucking up a Facebook post.
Yeah. It's I love the fact that we predominantly work with SMEs and very much on the small side of SMEs as well, because it really does. It means we're able to work with brands that they are more local, and even if more local means UK wide, it does make things much simpler for them. But actually, when we've given them a really good foundation, a really understanding, and we've kind of broken it down, we've gotten to that place. We get to that place where they're not overthinking things, and everything's happening strategically, and it's all a well-oiled machine, and their business is growing. And then when they look to move, and perhaps move into Europe or open up in the US or whatever it's going to be, actually at that point, when they do need to start to overthink things a little bit more, perhaps it's a much easier step. Because it's kind of like you've got the foundations, you already know what the rules of play are. But yeah, it's basically, I started to say I prefer working with the smaller businesses because it's just bloody easier, and then realised how that was going to come across and tried to fix it at the end. So that's what happened there, guys.
It's great to get the balance, like between the different sizes of company, because there are the SMEs to whom you can do some targeted ads and it makes a world of difference for them. And it clicks, they run out of orders, they run out of stock. It's fantastic. Equally, you can see the power of the post you're putting out with a global business and the impact it has and what it means, just by things like the, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of impressions it has. So yeah, it's great to get the balance, like you say. And sometimes you do need your brain just to kind of have a little rest. You can't be thinking, right, what's going on in the US and Singapore and Australia and here as well. So
absolutely cool. Okay, so we are, what are we, like 46 minutes in? So let's wrap it up there, because although this is called live lunch, if we don't wrap it up under an hour, you guys actually don't get time to have lunch, which I'm very conscious of. So we'll stop there. Thank you. I think we're trying to get a guest sorted for next week, so we'll announce that as soon as we've got that confirmed. And yeah, like I say, just look out. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your poison of choice is, come and give us a follow there. And don't forget to tune back in next week, Thursday, 1:00. And I promise to behave a little bit better. Don't know what's wrong with me today. Very, very immature today. I promise that. Well, I'll be a little bit older anyway, definitely. So yeah, I'll probably be all stern and miserable next week. So you can tune in for that. Emily's not here, but should we do the little wave anyway?
Yeah, I'm ready to do a screenshot.
Yeah, you got it, have you?
Yeah, I've got it. Don't worry.
Otherwise, we'll be in trouble, and it's like nobody wants to see Emily mad. So we'll do a little wave. Thanks for joining us. See you next week, everyone, and I will end the show there.